Hello everyone. So today our topic of discussion is earthquakes. So what is earthquakes? Earthquakes is the sudden movement or the trembling of the earth's tectonic plates, which creates shaking of the ground, and the shaking can destroy buildings, can break the surface of the earth, and it releases very high amount of energy. So moving ahead, we would be discussing about the earthquakes related terms. The first one is focus. So what is focus? It is the point from where the earthquake originated inside the earth. But the point which is on the surface of the earth, just perpendicular to the focus, is known as epicenter. Focus is the point from where exactly the earthquake originated or this trembling originated, but epicenter is the perpendicular point on the surface of the earth. The next is foreshocks. Foreshocks are the earthquakes which are of lesser intensity compared to the main earthquake, or which is known as main shock. The foreshocks occurs before the main shocks. Main shock is an earthquake which is of as high magnitude, which can be easily observed by the seismograph. So foreshocks occurs before the earthquakes, but before the occurring of main shocks, it is hard to predict that these are the foreshocks. But once a earthquake of very high magnitude occurs, then we can say that all the earthquakes which have occurred before this main shock are of lesser intensity are foreshocks. But if any earthquake of lesser intensities from the main shock occur after the main shocks, then it is known as aftershocks. Intensity of aftershocks will be lesser than the intensity of main shocks, and that's it. If it is there is another term that is known as swarm earthquake, and the swarm earthquake are those which can last for weeks, which can be produce many thousands of earthquake of very small volume. The swarms can be observed in volcanic environments and some hydrothermal systems also, some mountain regions also, where geothermal energy release reasons they are there. The swarms are mainly very large number of continuous earthquakes with very less volume, with very lesser intensity. Next one is what are the causes of earthquakes? So we have seen number of earthquakes, but what are the exact causes of this? So a very important cause is fault zones. What are these fault zones? Fault zones are the reasons of fractures between the plates. So when the rocks fracture with each other, then they create fault zones. Like there are various fault zones in the Himalayas also, as we know, like main centered fault, then main boundary thrust, then Himalayan frontal thrust. So there are three thrusts are present here in the Himalayan region. These thrusts mean that the rocks are not just facing each other. They are at some angle. They are inclined at some angle this way. So let's say these in this region if the fault is there. This is not perpendicular exactly. It is like on an angle of 45-degree. So if the angle is this way, then we will call it thrust. So in Himalayan regions, mostly we can found the thrust. And a very important example of the fault is this Bhuj earthquake as we know it. So this Bhuj earthquake has been occurred in the fault zone of this Gujarat region. Similarly, there are various fault zones also present in the Satpura Vindhya regions here. And so moving ahead to the next cause, that is plate tectonics. So plate tectonics mean that due to the movement of two plates, As we know, here we have Pacific plate this side and North American plate this side. This is a very important example of the transform plate boundary also. So this San Andreas fault receives number of earthquakes due to the movement of these plates, the transform plate boundary here. So the plate tectonics here lead to the earthquakes. Next one is volcanic activities. So it cannot be said that if there is a volcano, there must be earthquake. But due to the subduction of the plates here, let's say the Philippines plate subducted or the Java region Pacific plate subducted here, or in this region Nazca plate subducted. So due to the subduction of the plates in this whole region, it lead to some amount of magma coming out, which disturbs the uh, plates, and due to this disturbance some trembling occurs. So there are very much chances that if there is volcanic eruption or the magma is coming out, there may be earthquakes. This reason is uh, very much famous reason for the occurrence of earthquakes and also volcanoes. Those are the reasons of these trenches. These are very important trenches where earthquake occur very prominently. The next one is human induced earthquakes. So before we have already discussed what are the naturally occurred earthquakes, but there are some causes like the earthquake can be induced by the reservoirs. So if it is induced by the reservoir, like there is a Koyna Dam in Maharashtra, due to which a very high intensity earthquake has been caused. So it is completely a human-made event. So we have categorized it under human-induced earthquakes. So here now the types of the earthquakes based on the depth of the focus. So as we already know what is focus, focus is a point from where the earthquake originated. So looking on the shallow earthquake, so if the depth of the focus is less than 50 kilometers, so this is our earth and let's say it originated at this depth, so this depth would be less than 50 kilometers, then this is shallow earthquakes. If it is from 50 to 300 kilometers, then it will be intermediate earthquakes. But in case if it is more than 300 kilometers, these will be categorized under deep earthquakes. Now the next one is now the P waves and S waves. P waves are those waves which can travel through solid, liquid, and gases, while S waves are those which can only travel through solid. So that's why we can see that there is a very large shadow zone for the S waves. This region cannot be reached by the S waves. Let's say some waves are originated here, they can reach out till this point only because the S waves cannot enter this liquid core region. The outer core is liquid, that's why the S waves cannot enter this. So the maximum zone where we can find the S waves is this only. So that's why this much reason is shadow zone for the S waves. These P waves and S waves play a very important role to let the scientists know about the earthquakes, because let's say earthquake has occurred on this corner of the earth, the seismographs which have been set up here also can detect some amount of earthquake by the presence of P waves or S waves here. So uh, it helps the scientists to know on any corner of the earth that the earthquake has occurred at some place. So P waves and S waves plays a very important role to know about the occurrence of the earthquakes. So I hope you understand the video well. Thank you for watching.